Hi guys, welcome back to my channel Skills It Go and welcome to the Spring Boot tutorial. So in this video, we will see how to create a Spring Boot project in Eclipse IDE. So let's open Eclipse and open the workspace. So now we have opened an Eclipse workspace, which is fresh workspace. Now let's try to create a Spring Boot project. So here we are having so many options. Let's click on create a project and just type Spring type. So here if you observe, we are not getting any option of creating Spring Boot project. So here we need a tool. So we need to install a tool to create a Spring Boot project directly. So let's open Eclipse Marketplace. So in search bar, just type STS tool and click on enter. So here we are getting a different tools. So let's click on latest, either Spring Tools 4 or Spring Tools 3. So let's install the latest one. Click confirm. Click on accept the terms and license, click on finish. So here if you observe, the software is getting installed. So this tool should download and install. It will take some time. Make sure you have the internet connection to download the tools. Now the installation completes. It's asking to restart the Eclipse. And now let's create a project and search for Spring. Now type Spring. Now if you observe, we are getting an option Spring Boot because we have installed a STS tool. So click on Spring Starter Project and click on Next. And by default, it will have a URL to the Spring IO website, so that it will create using that website and it will import the project in Eclipse. So this is the name of the project. Let's keep default values, and this is the location where this project is stored, and the package type is Maven and jar, language Java version we can change to 8, and this is the group ID. If you know a little bit knowledge of Maven, there we will be giving a group ID, an artifact ID and version, so we can keep this as defaults or you can change. And this is the description, and this is the default package created inside a Java code. And now let's click on next. So these are all dependencies available to import in a POM file. So for now we can leave it or if you want any dependencies like web project, we can import dependency of web. For now we just leave it and click next and click on finish. So here if you observe, the process is taking place, import getting started content. So it will create a project and it will import here. So the demo project is created. Let's expand it. It is still processing, that's why we are getting the structure like this. Once the import or creation of project completes, we will get the proper structure. Let's wait for this process to complete. It is taking a longer time to create a project because this is the first Spring Boot project I am creating in this laptop. So when it is a first project, it needs to download all the dependencies from the Maven repository from the internet and it needs to import here. So downloading will take a internet and we need a internet speed, and at the first time it will download so many jars, means so many dependent jars. So let's wait for its download. If you try to expand this progress and see, we can see updating Maven dependencies. So Maven dependencies are getting downloaded from the internet. So that's why it is taking a longer time. So here you can see, if you can observe, the jar names .jar, all these jars are getting downloaded from the internet, because as this is the first project, it needs to download all the dependencies from the internet. Do you know what is the power of the Spring Boot project? If you open the POM file, so here we have specified a dependency Spring Boot starter. So here we have mentioned only a couple of dependencies, but here if you observe, many dependencies, many jars are getting downloaded automatically. We no need to specify all those dependencies in a POM file. The Spring Boot project automatically downloads all the dependencies required for this project. So if it is a normal Spring Framework project, we need to specify all the dependencies like this, their group ID, artifact ID, and the scope or the version. But in Spring Boot, we no need to mention. It will automatically download all the required dependencies or jars. Okay, all the jars and the dependencies got downloaded. So let's open a project structure. So if you see now, we have a clear picture. Source main Java, source main resources, source test Java, and the Java library 1.8 and Maven dependencies. These are the dependencies which are downloaded from the internet automatically. So this is the power of Spring Boot. We have specified only Spring Boot starter dependency. Automatically all these required dependencies got downloaded. So if you observe, there is one Tomcat dependency also will get downloaded because the Tomcat is embedded in the Spring Boot project. So let's see, there is a Tomcat dependency. JUnit Android JSON. Okay, this is a normal Spring Boot project. So if it is a web project, then the Tomcat dependency we have got downloaded. But now there is no Tomcat. So if we create a web, or if we add a web dependency, then the Tomcat will get downloaded automatically. For now, let's see a simple Spring Boot project. If you open a source, this is the default package we have mentioned, and this is a demo application. So this is the main class for Spring Boot application to start a project. So here if you can see Spring Boot application, this annotation is responsible to tell this class contains a main class or main method, and this is responsible to start a Spring Boot project. So for our reference, let's give a sysout and write hello world. Hello world, or my channel name skillsetgo. So let's save it. Now let's run this project. Let's right click, run as. So here if you can observe, we have a Spring Boot app, run as a Spring Boot application. So here if you can observe, we have output hello world skillsetgo. So this is how we will create a simple Spring Boot project. I hope you like this video and understood how to install STS tool to create a Spring Boot application. For more videos or tutorials on Spring Boot, please watch this Spring Boot series in my YouTube channel. Please like, share and subscribe my channel. Thank you for watching. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel skillsetgo. In the previous video we have seen how to create a simple Spring Boot project in Eclipse. So in this video we will create a fresh project with a web project. So in previous video we have not created a web project. In this video we will create a simple Spring Boot web project. So let's right click, new project, type Spring, click on Spring Starter project. So here we have got a default values, default project name, type, version, group, artifact. So name we have already demo project, that's why it's giving demo 1. So let's rename it to Spring Web. And let's leave all these values here. Click on next. So previously we have not selected any dependencies from this list, so that's why it was a simple Spring Boot project. Now we want a web project, so we need to search web dependency here, and now we will get here a Spring Web. Let's click on Spring Web. We want this dependency, so let's click next and finish. Here you can observe import getting started content. So this project will create little more faster than the first project, because during the first project all the jars needs to be downloaded from the internet. For the next project it will use already downloaded jars from the laptop. If it wants any extra jars, it will download from the internet. So if you expand this progress, you can see import getting started content. So let's wait for this process. Okay, the project is successfully created, all the progress is completed. So let's expand our project structure and let's see. So let's close these files from the previous project, that is demo project. So here if you observe, we have the same structure: Java resources, test, and 1.8 version of Java Maven dependencies. If we expand a Maven dependencies, as this is the web project, we have included a web dependency. We will get all the jars required for the Spring Boot web project. If we see, we have a Jackson jars, a Spring Web MVC. If we observe, we will have a embedded Tomcat dependency also here. So let's search for Tomcat dependency. Spring Web Embedded WebSocket Spring Boot Starter Tomcat. If you see, we have a Spring Boot Starter Tomcat jar. This is a embedded Tomcat. If you open a simple Spring project and open Maven project, Maven dependencies, here we are not having a Tomcat dependency because we have created this project as a simple project, not a web project. So if you observe, we don't have many dependent jars here, because as this is not a web project, it doesn't require all the dependencies. But here we have a more dependencies, as this is a web project. If we open a form file of this, we will be having Spring Boot Starter Web, but the previous project has just Spring Boot Starter, it doesn't have a web. So this is a simple difference between a web project and the normal Spring Boot project. So here we are getting an error. If we update this project, it will be fine. Update project, let's click on force update and OK. So the Maven project is getting updated. Now we have created a Spring Web project successfully. As soon as we update a Maven project, that error in pom XML file also gone. So as this is a web project, we need to have HTML page or JSP pages. So by default, a Spring looks all the pages into a web app folder. So the web app folder should be in source, main, and inside main there needs to be a web app folder. So let's create a web app folder. New folder. Let's name it web app. Finish. So the Spring project looks all the JSP pages or HTML pages into this folder. So for our demo purpose, let's create a simple HTML page and let's try to access it. New HTML page. So let's name it hello. Finish. So now we have created hello.html page. So let's write anything in body. Welcome to Spring Web project. So we will try to access this HTML page from the browser after running this web app. So how to start this project? Run as a Spring Boot application. So the normal Spring Boot project also we have run using Spring Boot application. This also we will run Spring Boot application. So web server failed to start. Port 8080 was already in use. So I have already started the Tomcat. Let's close all the projects and let's try to run it again. So if you observe, the Spring Web project starts a Tomcat automatically. So starting service Tomcat on port 8080. So we can access this HTML page directly from the web browser. Let's open a browser. Type localhost, as this is running in the laptop. Port is 8080 / we can access any resource in a web app. So we have created hello.html. So we have wrote welcome to Spring Web project in a body. So we are getting this page. So we have successfully run this Spring Boot web project and accessed an HTML page. So this is a simple Spring Boot web application. So the main use case of this web application is not accessing the resources. It is mainly for the REST APIs. It is mainly used for the REST APIs. We will see all those concepts in the next videos. I hope you liked this video and understood. Please like, share and subscribe my channel. Thank you for watching. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel Skills & Co and welcome to Spring Boot tutorial. So the main important concept or feature in a Spring framework is dependency injection or inversion of control. So let's take a simple Spring Boot project. So in previous videos we have seen how to create a simple Spring Boot project and a simple Spring Web project. So let's open the project and open the main file. Let's expand it. So this is the main class where the Spring Boot application starts. So the main concept of dependency injection is the developer no need to create an object using a new keyword. In Java, the Spring framework automatically creates objects and it will inject it wherever needed. So we just need to specify a variable name and the type of the class. Then the Spring automatically creates an object and keeps all the objects into a container, and whenever we request for an object, it will take from the container and it will give. So let's directly go to the small demo. So here if you observe, let's see what this returns. This returns a context object, and let's see what is that. Create a local variable. So Spring application.run returns configurable application context. So from this context we can get any object from a Spring container. So first let's create a simple class, a student class. New class, name student. So let's have a properties, integer, student ID, SID, and string as student name. And let's create a getter setter methods. Right click, go to source and generate getters and setters. Let's select. So now we have created a student class, and if you want a student class, how we will create? We will create student1 equal to new student. And let's have a function let's give println student object. So we will create a student class object with using new keyword, and let's call st1.node. Now if you execute this, an object of student will be created, and whenever we call the function we will get output as student object. So let's run Spring Boot application. So as you can see, we have a student object. So we have got the object output student object. But here we no need to create manually with using new keyword. The Spring automatically generates an object and keeps into a container, and we need to get from that container. We can use this context object and just say get bean and give a class type student dot class. And now let's run this and see the output. So if you observe, we have requested for the student object, but it is saying no qualifying bean of type student. So somehow we need to tell to the Spring, create the object of student and keep into the Spring container. So if it is in container, then this context object will get the object. If the student object instance is not in the container, then Spring can't get. So what we need to do, just go to the student and just mention annotation component. So we are just saying create the object of student into the Spring container, so that whenever we request for the object, it will get from the container. Now let's run and see the output. See, it worked and we have got the output student object. So whichever objects we need to keep into the Spring container, we will mark them as at component. So Spring automatically creates the object and keeps into a Spring container, and whenever we request a bean, we will get an object of it. So in the next video, we will see what is the scope annotation and what is the qualifier annotation and what is auto void annotation. I hope you like this video and understood. Please like, share and subscribe my channel. Thank you for watching. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel Eclipse IDE. In the previous video, we have seen what is dependency injection, and we have seen a small demo how to create a student object without using a constructor. So instead of using new keyword and the constructor, we have used a context, and we called a getBean method, and we have specified what object we want. And for student class, we have mentioned annotation at component. Otherwise the Spring doesn't create an object of student. We have to mention at component. So as soon as we start a project, all the objects are created which have at component, and it keeps in a container, and as soon as we request for the object, we will get an object of student. So in this video we will see what is auto void annotation. Here you can say what is the use of this method getBean. Anyhow we are calling a method. Before also we are calling a constructor, and here also we are calling a method. So what is the use? So we will see what is auto void and how it is simplified. So let's create one more class, address, and let's create a member variables like string city, string state, and let's have getter setter methods. Generate getter setter methods. So we have created an address class, and let's have an address for each student. And let's have a getter setter method for address also. Generate. So now we have a student class and we have an address class, and here we have specified address variable for each student. So inside this note method, let's call a note method of address. Let's have a same method here also. This is just for demo purpose. Address object. So as soon as we call a note method, here we will call address dot note. And here we will get an object of student with using a context, and as soon as we call the note, the expected output is it should print student object, and it should call this method that is here, and it should print address object. Now let's run this project and let's see what errors we will get. See, we have got a null pointer exception. So here the address object is not created by the Spring. So we have not created, we just initialized. So here if you observe, we have not kept at component. If you are not keeping at component, the Spring doesn't create an object. Now let's run this project. So here again we got a null pointer exception. The object of address is not yet created. So here the address object will be created by the Spring and it will keep in the container, but we have not specified to get this address object from the container. We just initialized. So here we can use auto void. So what this auto void do means, as soon as we specify an auto void here, the Spring tries to fetch this address object from the Spring container. So here we specified component because the Spring will create an object of address and we will keep in container, and we will get an object of address here. Now let's run this project and see. So here you can see we got the expected output, student object and address object. We have got an address object from the Spring container because we have specified this as auto void. So now you see we have simplified the dependency here. In this class we have used a getBean method, but here we have not used any getBean method. We just specified auto void. The Spring automatically fetches from the container. You can say why not to use a auto void here also instead of calling a getBean, but here it fails because we can't put auto void annotations for the local variables, means the variables inside a method. This is a method and this is the variable inside a method. We can't keep auto void for local variables. If you want to try, let's remove this method and let's keep auto void. So you can see the annotation auto void is disallowed for this location because student is a local variable. So I hope you like this video. and understood what is auto void and what happens when we keep an auto void annotation for a member variable. It automatically fetches from the Spring container. So in future videos we will see what is qualifier annotation and other annotations and what are their uses. I hope you like this video. Please like, share and subscribe my channel. Thank you for watching. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel Skill Set Go. In the last video we have seen what is auto void annotation and how can it be used to assign object from a Spring container. So in this video we will see what is scope annotation. So first of all, how the Spring framework creates a class object. So it should finally call a constructor of a class. So here there is no constructor, so by default there will be a default constructor with no arguments. So the Spring framework will call that constructor and create this student objects. So if you want a demo, let's create a constructor. And let's have a sysout student constructor. So if you see the main class, we have requested for a student object. So it will search the Spring container and it will get the object of the student. So the student class should have a component annotation, then only the Spring framework can create the object of this student by calling its constructor. So now let's run this application and let's see whether we will get this output or not, student constructor. So as you can see, we have got a student constructor. So in this video we will see what is the scope of this student. It means every time we request an object of a student, whether it will give a same object or it will create a new object. So here we have requested object and let's request it again and see whether is a new object or not. Student 2. So here we can know whether it will create a new object or the old object based on this output. If we get this output once, it means one object is created. If we get 2 times, then it means 2 objects are created. So let's run this again. But as in note we have called twice, so we will get this output as twice, student object. Let's run this project. So as you can see, student constructor we have got only once, but we have got 2 times the same object. It means here this object and this object are same. It means by default the Spring scope is singleton. It means every time we will get the same object. So how to change the scope of the class? Let's go to student and let's introduce one more annotation called scope, and let's give a scope value as prototype. By default it will be singleton. If you specify it as scope prototype, every time when we request an object, it will create a new object and use it. And now we need to get student constructor twice. Let's run this project and see. So here if you observe student constructor and student constructor, so we have got 2 students. It means if it is prototype, every time it will create a new object of student and it will return it. If we remove this, it will create only single object. So let's revert back to singleton prototype and let's see at what point of time the object is created. It means at what point of time the constructor is called. It means while requesting the object, the Spring framework will create an object, or before requesting an object, all the objects are created and kept in the container. So here let's comment all this. We are not requesting any object of the student, but if we get the output as student constructor, it means the Spring framework creates it before and keeps in a Spring container before requesting. Let's run this project. So as you can see, we have got student constructor. It means the Spring container creates a student object and keeps in container, and as soon as we request an object with get bean, it will search from the container and it will give the same object. And let's see if it is prototype scope, at what point of time the object is created. So let's comment all this again and let's change this to prototype scope as prototype. And now let's run this. We are not requesting any object of student. Before, if it is singleton, it will create one object and keeps in container. If it is prototype, let's see what is it. So as you can see, we have not got the output student constructor. It means if the scope is prototype, the Spring framework doesn't create an object of student until we request it. Let's uncomment this and now let's see the output. We have got student constructor and student constructor. So I hope you understood what is the scope of singleton and what is the scope of prototype. And if it is singleton, the Spring framework creates before requesting and keeps in container. If it is prototype, it will. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel Skillset Go. In the last video we have seen what is auto-void annotation and how to inject an object using auto-void annotation in Spring framework. So in this video we will see what is qualifier annotation, how it can be used. So qualifier annotation is mostly used when there is interface and there are implemented objects, and we can inject any implemented object using a qualifier. So the best example for the qualifier annotation is car and engine. So let's create a car class and engine class with interface. So first let's create an engine interface, new interface, engine. Finish. Let's have a function start engine. And let's have implemented classes for this engine interface like petrol engine and diesel engine. Let's create a class petrol engine. So this implements engine interface. So we need to implement the methods from the interface. Here you can write sysout petrol engine started. So in the same way we can create one more implemented class like diesel engine. Implement engine let's have a function, an implemented function, give us this out diesel engine started. So we have created an interface of engine and we have created two objects. Now let's have a car class, and here let's have a name and engine object. And let's have getter setter methods. Generate. So now you can see this is a common interface engine. So for this engine reference, we can either assign an object of petrol engine or diesel engine. So we are going to assign these objects using a qualifier annotation. So first let's have a function start engine. So inside this, using this engine variable, we will call its method start engine. So here in this method we will know which class it is called, whether the petrol engine or the diesel engine, based on the object assigned to this engine. So first, so here let's remove the previous or comment the previous examples, and let's get a car object using the context. Context dot get bean, we want car class. Here we will get a car object and let's call the function start engine. So from the container we will get a car object. So if you are not mentioning it as at component, then Spring Framework won't create an instance of car. So here we will get an object of car, and as soon as we call the start engine, this function will be called, and inside this the engine's method will be called. So in order to call this method, we need to assign an engine object for this. So in previous video we have learned, if we assign an auto void annotation, automatically it will fetch the object of engine and it will assign to this. So before that, we need to mention its classes as component. So let's go to petrol engine and let's mention it as at component, and diesel engine also let's mention it as component. So here the expectation is the object should be assigned to this engine. Let's run this project and see whether it runs or it gives any errors. So we have got an error saying field engine in car required a single bean, but two were found, diesel engine and petrol engine. So the meaning is, here we have mentioned an interface type. So the container will create a petrol engine and diesel engine object and keeps in the container, and it will search any engine type in the container, and it found two types, petrol engine and diesel engine. So here let's go to the car. Here we need to mention what type of engine we need. So here yet qualifier annotation comes into the picture. We can specify the type of the object or the name of the bean. So by default, Spring Container creates an object of petrol engine with the name petrol engine, all small letters. And here also by default, Spring Framework creates an object of diesel engine with the name diesel engine, all small letters. So first let's assign a petrol engine to this car using qualifier. We can specify name. We need petrol engine object. Now let's see whether we get petrol engine started as output or not. Now run again. So as you can see, petrol engine started. The program runs successfully because we have mentioned we need petrol engine for this engine object. So suppose let's change this name to some other name and let's try whether it will work or not. Petrol engine 1 and try to run it. So we have got an error. Bean type that could not be found because Spring Framework creates petrol engine with the name petrol engine, not any other name. So we need to give a proper name. Let's run this. We will get petrol engine started. So suppose we want to assign a diesel engine. Let's change to diesel engine and let's run it. So here you can see diesel engine started. So the main advantage here is without changing the engine object, we are getting the required object, either diesel engine or petrol engine. So here, as soon as we mention component, Spring Container will create an object with the name petrol engine. We can mention we want an object with the name, some other name, like petrol engine name. And here also we can mention we want diesel engine name. Now the Spring Container creates the object with this name, not with the name of the class. And now if you run this class, we will get an error because there is no object with this bean. Let's run this. So we have got an error. There is no bean type diesel engine, could not be found because we are telling to Spring create an object with this name, but we are accessing with the other name. Here if you specify the right name, we will get the correct output. Here you can see diesel engine started. So this is the main advantage of qualifier. This is mainly used for the interface and implemented classes. I hope you liked this video and understood what is qualifier and where exactly it can be used. Please like, share and subscribe my channel for more videos or more tutorials on the Spring Boot. Thank you for watching. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel Skillset Go. In the previous video we have seen what is qualifier annotation and how it can be used to fetch particular name with bean, particular bean with the name. So for the demo purpose we have created an interface and implemented two classes, petrol engine and diesel engine, and the Spring can't get an engine object because it has two objects, so we don't know which object to get. So we can specify here, get the diesel engine object, and finally here we are getting a car instance. So in this video we will see what is the importance of add configuration annotation and add bean. So here if you observe, we are getting a car instance, so every time we will get a same engine. So here we specified it as diesel engine. Here we will get every time a diesel engine car, we won't get a petrol engine car. So this is the disadvantage. So indirectly it is tightly coupled with the diesel engine. So the equal code for this is, if you remove this one and make this as diesel engine and change the settle method. Now run this. See, we got the same output. So the auto void will fetch an object of diesel engine. So before we just had a qualifier and we had an engine reference. So it is same and it is tightly coupled to the diesel engine. So what we want is, here we can specify I want a petrol engine car and I want a diesel engine car. So we need to create a petrol engine car and diesel engine car and keep in a container. Then we can fetch. So for that we will have a configuration class. Let's create a configuration class. Let's name it as config. And we will write all the beans here. Means we will create manually the car and we will mark them as beans so that we can fetch them easily with using the annotation auto while or get bean. So we need to mark this as configuration. So this will tell that this class has one or more bean objects. So we need to create a petrol engine car and a diesel engine car. So just have a method public which returns a car. Get petrol engine car. So this will return a car and we can create manually car, new car, and we can set a engine. So we need to pass a petrol engine object here for set engine, and finally we can return the car. So but how we need to get the engine? Just pass an argument saying petrol engine and pass this as to this. It's already passed, and the spring will create. So whatever the object returned by this method is kept in a spring container. So we need to mark this as bean so that spring will create a car object whatever returned from this method and keeps in a container. So we have to name the bean so that we can get with that name. So petrol engine car. Now the spring framework will mark this car object as petrol engine car, and we can happily get the petrol engine. So let's try to get this car here. So here we are calling generally car. Let's pass the bean name, get bean name, petrol engine car, and we have to add cache to car. And we no longer need this annotation or this auto while. We are not assigning this engine object here. We are assigning in a configuration file. We are directly creating a car, assigning engine and returning. And let's run this and see whether we'll get errors or the output. See, as you observe, we have got a petrol engine started. Let's say now we want a diesel engine car. Let's create a diesel engine car. Let's mark this bean as diesel engine, and here also diesel engine. And let's create one more car with the diesel engine. Car 1. So now we need to get two outputs, petrol engine and diesel engine car. Let's execute. See, we got petrol engine started, diesel engine started. So now we can get any car at runtime because we have created a method get petrol engine car. Internally the Spring framework will execute this method, and before executing it needs to pass these arguments. So we don't need to mention they create these argument objects to the Spring. It automatically fetches it from the Spring container. So diesel engine and petrol engine marked as component, so automatically those objects are created and kept in the container. So whenever this method is called, these objects are, this engine, diesel engine is fetched from the container and passed to this method, and here also petrol engine is fetched from the container and passed to this method, and it will create a car. Suppose if you remove the component here, it can't create a diesel engine car. Let's run this. We might get an error. See here, diesel engine, bean type diesel engine, that could not be found because we are not told to Spring to create an object. So as soon as we mention, it will create, and here we can fetch it. So this is how we will create a custom object. I hope you like this video and understood the concept of configuration, annotation, and the concept of bean, and how we can create a custom objects and keep in a Spring container so that we can get them from anywhere in the project without calling these methods manually. So if you want to create a car object, we need to call explicitly get petrol engine car, and we need to pass these arguments. But if you have the at bean and at configuration, we can happily get them using an annotation auto-void or context object. So please like, share and subscribe my channel for more videos. Thank you for watching. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel Skill Set Go. In this video we will see how to create a simple REST API using a Spring Boot application. So first let's create a Spring Boot web app. So new project, search for Spring, we will get Spring Starter project. So here we can name the project as Spring Web. We can change the group ID, we can change the artifact ID, nothing but project name, and version. Let's keep all the defaults. Click on next. So here, as this is a web project, we need to include the dependency of web. So here just select Spring Web. If you want any other dependencies, you can also include those. As this is the simple REST API, let's include only the Spring Web. Click on next and finish. Here you can observe the project is getting created and imported. So the project is created. So the first step here is we need to have a class marked as REST controller. If you open Spring Web application, this is the default class created by the Spring project. So this is the main class. So let's create a class named as controller where all the APIs we will create. Let's name it controller and mark this as REST controller. So we are not getting a REST annotation. Yeah, we got a REST controller annotation. Let's import it and let's create a function, simple function, public string hello, and this function returns a string. Let's return anything for now. Welcome to simple REST API. And we need to access this function from a browser. So we need to keep this, make this as API to the particular URI. So we can use request mapping and we can give the URL path here. For now, just say hello. So as soon as we access this path from the browser, we need to get this output, welcome to simple REST API. So let's run this Spring Boot web app. So as this is a Spring Boot, the Tomcat is embedded inside this. If you open Maven dependencies, you can find a Tomcat. Here you can see Tomcat embedded WebSocket, start Spring Boot starter Tomcat. So all the dependencies are already imported or included here by the Spring. So let's run this app using Spring Boot. Run as Spring Boot application. So here you can see starting service, starting servlet. You can also see on what port the Tomcat is running. So let's access this URL and let's see whether we will get this output or not. So let's go to the browser. Just type localhost as this is running in current laptop. The port is 8080 and the URL is help. So we got welcome to simple REST API. So whatever we return here, we are getting there. If you want to change and test, let's give dots, save, and restart the project, relaunch the project. And now again access it. See, we got the update. So this is the simple REST API. So whatever we are returning here, we will get there. So in future videos, we will learn more about REST APIs, different types of request methods. Please like, share and subscribe my channel. Thank you for watching. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel Skillset. In the last video, we have seen how to create a simple REST API which will return some string. So in this video and follow-up videos, we will learn a different type of requests and we will learn how to insert a data into a database and how to get the data from the database using a JPA, which is Java Persistence API. So we no need to write any manual queries like select star from table name or insert into the values. So the JPA Java Persistence API will take care of all those things, all the CRUD operations. So the Spring Boot provides an in-memory database called H2. So we can use that database for a demo purpose. So first let's close this and let's create a fresh Spring Boot project which will have a JPA facility. Just create new project, search for Spring Starter project and name the project as Spring JPA, and remaining all you can keep default values. Next, and here as first we need to select this is a web project. So search for web, we will get a Spring Web. So next we need a JPA facility. Just search for JPA, Spring Data JPA. So now we want H2. So this is a in-memory database. Just select this. So using these three, we will create a REST APIs like get from database, update the database. We will provide the values to the REST API. So the type of request is get, post, put. So all those things, and how we can keep the values directly into the database and get from the database using a JPA. And we will use H2 database in memory, which will provided by Spring Boot. Just click on next and finish. So here the project is getting created and imported. So let's expand the progress. You'll see all the required jars for the JPA and H2 is getting downloaded. So all the jars got downloaded. Let's expand our project. So here you can see we have got an error in form XML. This is a general error. If you update a Maven project, it will go. So update project, and click on force update and click on OK. So here you can see the error has gone. So now we have created a project with using a JPA facility, and we have also H2. So here you can see the dependency is added, com H2 database artifact H2, and here also you can see Spring Boot starter data JPA. So the main goal is to insert a data into a database and get the data from the database using the REST APIs. So first we need to configure our database, in-memory database H2. So we no need to do more configurations. We have an application properties file in Spring Boot. Here we can specify all the required values. So first we need to enable the H2 console. Spring.h2 console enabled. So just set it true so that the console is enabled. We can access it and see what data is available in the particular database. So now we need to set the data source platform. Spring data source platform. So that is H2. And we need to set the URL for this data source. So every database has an URL, you all know. So data source dot URL. So the format is JDBC H2. This is in-memory database, so just set it. And name your database. So I will name it, the database name as skillset-go. So the database will be created with the name skillset-go. So that's it. This is the configuration needed for the in-memory database, that is H2. So now let's create a simple model which is equal to a table inside a database. So let's go to here, just create a class. Let's create a student class, student, and let's have a properties, integer student ID, string student name, and you can also set score if you want. And let's have getter setter methods. So we need to tell to Spring Boot that this is equal to a table inside a database. So just annotate it to entity, which is JavaX persistence package. And we need to define the primary key out of these three properties. Just annotate student ID with ID. So what we have done up to now is we have configured our database and we have set a table. So let's run this project and let's see the content of the database. You can run this project as run as Spring Boot application. So the application started and let's see the content of database. So how can we access the content? Localhost 8080 and let's say H2 console and enter. And here the URL should be equal to what we have given in application properties, JDBC H2 mem Ashok. not show, it is skill set go, and let's connect it. So here you can see we have got a table created also. See, this is the database and this is the table inside it. The table has SID, score, SName as we have defined here. So we just annotate it to entity and we just kept ID. We have defined our database configurations. That's it. The database is created. Just select star from skill set go. Table skill set go. Okay, table name is student. It is a database. See here, there are no rows presently. In future videos, we will learn how to insert a data and get the data from database using a JPA and a REST API. Thank you for watching. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel Skill Set Go. In the last video, we have configured our in-memory database H2 and we have created a sample model with student class. So we have marked this as entity. It means a table will be created in a H2 database, in-memory database, and this is a primary key. So in this video, we will see how to get the data from the database using a JPA or a repository. So first, to get the data from the database, we need to have some data before itself. As this is an in-memory database, we are using H2. Let's create one SQL file. Go to resources, right click, new, we need a file, search file, and here click on file. So just name the file as data.sql, and here you can write a insert query so that that data is inserted into the database before, so we can access this data using our REST API. So write the query insert into student, values will be ID, just say it is 101, name just say Ram, and score let's say 234. That's it. We don't need to do anything else. If you run this application, there will be a student table and there will be a data with this, there will be a row with this data. So let's run this app. So here saying port 8080 was already in use, so we need to relaunch the app, not run again. So now we have started 2 times. So we need to relaunch the app. We need to click this. So now we can check whether we got this data into the table or not. Let's go to H2 console. So localhost 8080 H2 console. Let's reconnect it. So this is the URL we need to use, same as URL in application properties. Let's connect it and let's do select star from student. So here, as you can observe, there is no row inserted. So we have inserted the values like order, ID, name and score, but here it is ID, score and name. Let's change the order, score 234 and name. So now relaunch the app again. Let's see whether data is there or not. So let's connect again. As we have relaunched, we need to connect every time. So select star from student. So here you can see we got the row, ID, score and name. So like this, let's have some 3 rows. Let's name Ramesh, let's name Suresh, score let's say it is 434, 534 and ID is 102 and 103. So as soon as we start this application, these 3 rows will be inserted into the data. So these 3 rows will get inserted into the database. If you want, let's relaunch the app and just see the data inside HT console. Just reconnect, connect again, right, select star from student. So here you can see we got 3 rows. Now we will have a REST API to get all these values. So first let's create a REST controller. Let's name it student controller, and let's change the package to controller and finish. And first we need to mark this as REST controller. And inside this we can have a function which will get all the data. So we want list of students. Let's name it get students. And we need to return a list of students. So before this we need to have a repository to fetch a data from the H2 database. So first let's create a repository. Let's create a new class, package, let's say DAO, and name student repo, and mark this as, when we need to create this as interface, let's change this to interface. So we can extend the CRUD repository class so that we will get all the APIs required to fetch data from the database or to insert data into the database. So let's extend CRUD repository. CRUD repository, and we need to tell the model class and the ID. The class we are fetching from is student, and it is integer. The ID is integer. So that's it. We no need to do anything else. If you fetch, so let's go to the controller, and here we can just say, so first we need to have a student repo variable. Let's have a student repo, let's name it repo, and we can say how to get the instance, just say auto void. So we have learned all the auto void or dependent concepts in the previous videos. So we can get all the data from the database from the table student using repo find all. So that's it. We will get all the data. So but this will return an iterator of student. So first let's return all the data as a string, then later we will see how to return as a JSON. So we will get an iterator, we can convert into string to string, and let's return it. So just have a toString method, just generate a toString source toString generate. So we have an API which will get all the students data, but how can we access this method? We will have a get API at get mapping, and the URL is students. So let's execute and see, access the URL, whether we'll get data or not. Let's run this application, just relaunch this. So the application got started. Let's access the URL. It is localhost 8080 and the URL is students. Let's enter it. As you can see, we have got all the data what we have inserted. So the best way to access all the REST APIs is a client Postman. Let's open Postman. let's have local host 8080 and students. As you can see, we have got all the data, but this data is not in a JSON format. As you can see, whatever we wrote in a toString method, that is returned. So we will see how to return a data in a JSON format in the next video, and how to use more features while getting data from the database. I hope you like this video. Please watch the rest of the videos for more tutorials. Thank you for watching. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel Skillsetco. In the last video, we have seen how to get a data from a database. So we have used in-memory database provided by the Spring Boot, that is H2, and we have used CRUD repository to get the data directly from the database. We have not written any query. We just created the interface extends CRUD repository, and we have provided the table name and the primary key type. So that's it. We just need to call a method. It will get data from the database. We don't need to write any query. So for getting a data, first we need to keep some data before, so that we can get. So we created a data.sql file, and we have written for sample 3 insert queries, and we have a controller, and we have a method get mapping. Inside this we used repo, what we have created here, student repo, and there is a direct function. If we call, we will get all the data from the database. We don't need to write any query, and we are returning this as a string. So in this video we will see how to get a data in a JSON format, and how to get a list of students. Here we will return a list of students instead of a string, so that list of strings will be converted into directly JSON, and we will get the JSON response. So we will run this one and see the output. Just launching the application, and we can access it 8080 port, localhost 8080 students. So students is the URL mapping what we have done here. So just enter. So you can see we got all the data in a string format, not in a JSON format. So we have also accessed this URL from the Postman. Just click. So we got this data. So now we will use, instead of here we extends CRUD repository. So instead of CRUD repository, we will use JPA repository, where we will get more features. If we observe here, find all, what this method returns, it returns iteratable student, but we want directly list of students. So that can be possible with a JPA repository. So let's go to here first. Let's extend JPA repository instead of CRUD repository. So JPA repository. So here if you can see, open JPA repository. So there is no source, but if you see, JPA internally extends CRUD repository. It also extends some sorting method, so that it will get all the features which is provided by the CRUD repository also, and JPA provides an extra facility. So now just call find all. Now you can see it is providing a list of students, not the iteratable. So we can directly call, no need to convert into a string, and we can change the return type as list of students. And now we will execute this and see whether we will get a normal string data or a JSON data. Let's relaunch the app. So here the application got started application, and let's access it from Postman. So before extending JPA repository, we are getting this data in a string format. Now let's run it again. So now you can see we got a proper JSON response, student ID, student name, score. So these are the 3 data. We have kept it using a data.sql file here. And what we have done for the repository, we just extended JPA repository instead of CRUD repository, and the magic is we got a JSON response. we can see we got the JSON response. Now if I want only particular student details, so if I pass the ID 101, I need to get only the student ID with 101. I don't want all these details. So what I need is, suppose if I do this URL 101, I need to get these details. Let's run this. So presently we have not implemented this URL. Let's implement this URL and let's get the proper data of student. So let's go to our code, go to controller. Here students returns all the student details, but we want a particular student details. Let's have a separate API which will return student get details. So here the URL mapping is, this is also a get mapping where we will get data from database. We are not updating anything, and the URL we want is students and 101. So here let's use repo, return repo find by ID. So find by ID, and we will pass the ID, that is 101. So here if you see what is returning, it's returning optional student. It means if the student is present with 101, it will return student, otherwise it will return null. So let's change the return type also to optional student, and let's relaunch this app and let's access this URL to get the particular details. So the application got started, and let's send this request. See, now you can see we got the students data. So here the problem is, if you want the student data with 102, if you want student data with 103, we need to implement all the APIs here. So that is not the case. We can generally do here, we can keep a placement like ID, and we can pass any value here, the student ID, and we need to fetch this value to a variable. Let's initialize a variable SID, and we need to map this SID to this value. So this value will get into this variable. So we need to have param path variable, and the variable name is ID. So if we pass 101 here, the 101 will get into this SID, and we can use this SID here. So before implementing that, if you try to access student details with 102, we won't get. But once we relaunch this app, we will get all the students data. So let's access it now. If you see, we got the student details with 102 ID. If we change to 103, we got student details with 103, and if we change to 101, we got 101. So this is the power of this placement. So I hope you liked this video and understood. In the future videos, we will how to post the data with the post request, and how to insert a data into a database, and how to update the data in a database using a put request. Please like, share and subscribe my channel. Thank you for watching. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel Skillset Go. In the last videos we have seen REST APIs, get mapping, and we have seen how to get all the data from the database with using students URL, and how to get a detail for the particular student details with the particular ID. So with using this URL, we can pass any ID of the student, we will get particular student details. And we have used JPA to get the data from the database. So if you have seen, we have created a student repo which extends just JPA repository. The JPA repository will take care of everything. We just need to use its APIs. We have find by ID, we have find all. So in this video we will see how to pass a data to the request and how to insert the data into a database. So for this we will use a post request. So if you observe these two methods, these are get requests. get mapping and get mapping. So we will create one more method and we will accept the student data. So just create and let's return a student data what we have added. This is the return type and let's name post data. This is the method name. So here we need to accept a student details and we need to keep those details in a database. So we need to create student argument. So let's say student, and we need to return a student, and we can save this student using a repo in a database. Just use an available API called save and we can pass our student model. So that's it. The student data whatever we passed will be inserted into a database. So but we are returning the data after saving. We will get the data from the database, get by ID, find by ID, and we will pass the student ID what we have inserted, get the student ID, and just return it. So here we need to return optional student. Just change this to optional. Optional means either null or the student details. So we just created an implementation to insert data in a database using a JPA API, but we have not mapped this method to the URL. So we need to map this to post request. So let's have an annotation post mapping and map this to the URL students. So that's it. So if you can see, this URL and this URL is same, but the request type is different. This is get mapping, which will get the data. This is post mapping, which will accept the data and it will insert. And finally we will get that we are returning the same data. Let's relaunch this and let's pass the data using a postman. So let's go to postman. So here the application started. Here let's have an URL, localhost port is 8080, and the URL we are accessing is students, but the request type is not get, it is post, and we need to pass student details. Let's go to body and let's have, if you observe, the student model has student ID, student name and score. Let's pass all those data. SID is 104, student name let's say Ashok, and score let's say 900. And if you want to see the data from the database, we need to access the H2 console provided by Spring Boot, because we are using an in-memory database, localhost 8080 H2 console. So this is the URL what we have given in application.properties. Let's connect it and let's see what data is available in student table. So presently we have 3 rows. As soon as we post a student details data, we need to have this data also as the 4th row. Let's send it. If you can see, we have successfully returned the data, but let's see whether the data is inserted into database or not. So let's run this select star from student again. So if you can see, the data got inserted. So here you can see the magic of the post request and the Spring Boot. Here we are accepting as a student object, but in post request we are passing as different parameters, key value separately. And let's say we are not passing the score, we are just passing only student ID and student name. Just change the ID and let's insert. So now the score is null. Let's see the database, what is the data. So we have got the new row 105 and the null. And there is another way of posting data. Instead of posting the key value, we can post the same data using raw, body raw. We can pass direct JSON instead of key value pair. Let's change the data. Let's insert student ID 106. Let's say Ashok Kumar, and now let's post. We can see we got an error. So it is not accepting as a body, but if we pass the data as a form data, it is accepting. So how to rectify this? We need to map this object to a body. So for that we need to have a mapping annotation request body. That's it. Whatever the content we have passed to the body, it will try to map to this object. And now let's relaunch this app and let's see whether it accepts a body data. So now let's go to here. Before we are getting an error, it is not getting inserted. Now let's request again. Still it is saying unsupported media type, because here if you can see we are passing the data as a text. If we change, so this method will accept a JSON body, because we are mapping directly to a model. We need to pass as a JSON or a XML. So here we can simply change this to, we are passing as a text, we can just simply change this to JSON application JSON. Now it will be passed as a JSON. Now let's send it again. So it is posted successfully, and let's see whether this data is available in database or not. 106 ID. Let's presently it is up to 105. Let's, okay, as we have relaunched the application, we need to reconnect again. Select star from student, and this is again fresh database with 3 rows before, and the new row we have posted it using the request body. If you want to post the data again, let's change the ID Ashok Kumar Vilpala. Let's send it again. So we have got response, and let's see the database content. So here we have got the new row. So this is how we will post a data. We can post it as a form data and directly map to the model, or we can post it as a request body in a JSON format and we can directly map into student model. So we no need to do any explicit code to map a JSON to the model. Automatically it will convert and it will assign the data to the student. I hope you like this video, and in future videos we will see what is put request. Put request is generally for updating the data. Please like, share and subscribe my channel. Thank you for watching. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel Skillset Go. In the previous videos we have seen what is get mapping, what is post mapping, and how to pass a student ID as a path variable, and using the JPA APIs how we can directly modify the database. So find all is the API to get all the data, find by ID to get particular student ID details, and save is inserting a new data into a database. So in this video you will see what is put request. So the main difference between post mapping and put mapping is, normally post mapping is used to pass a new data to a API and that data will be inserted into database, and put mapping is generally used for updating the existing data. So it is almost same. So let's copy the method and paste it. Let's say update this, update data, and that's it. We don't need to do any change, because save API is responsible to insert. Suppose if the student data is not present in database, it will insert the data, and if it is already present with the particular ID, it will update the date, update the row. So this is like save and update. So we don't need to change this API, we can use a same API. and here we will get a same data what we have updated. So the main difference between these two is this is post mapping, and we need to put this as put mapping. So let's relaunch this app. So let's go to the H2 console, that is database console. Let's reconnect it, connect it, select star from student. So presently we have 3 rows. Let's update any one of this row using the put request. So we need to change this request type as put, and we need to pass the data. So we need to update the student ID 103. So presently if you see 103, score is 434 and name is Suresh. Let's update the score and name. So 103, let's give it name as Ashok Kumar Dulipala and score as 450. And now this row should get modified. So let's send this request. So we have got the updated data, and let's see the database whether it has new data or not. Let's run this query again. Here you can see the 3rd row got updated. So this is the main purpose of this put request. We will update the existing data using this API. So we have seen all types of main types of requests. One is get mapping, which will get all the students. Get mapping, and we are passing the ID, we will get particular student details. And post mapping, we are inserting new student details. And put mapping, we are updating the data. So in future videos, so here if you can see, we have used a basic CRUD operations like update, insert, get student by ID, and get all students. Suppose if you want to get student details with the particular score or student details with a particular name, here we have find by ID API, but we don't have find by ID, find by score. So we don't have other APIs, find by student name, find by score. Or if you want to sort the result by any student name or score by ID, we don't have all those APIs. In next video we will see how to achieve those APIs or those results from the database using a JPA repository very easily. So please like, share and subscribe my channel. Thank you for watching. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel Skills Go. In the last videos we have seen all types of requests using a REST APIs in the REST APIs using Spring Boot. As you can see, we have a get mapping is the get request, post mapping which represents a post request, put mapping which represents a put request. So these are all the REST APIs as we have annotated with REST controller. So we have also seen how to access a database content using JPA. So we have used find all API provided by the JPA. You can see we have a student repository which in turn extends a JPA repository, and this JPA repository provides all the basic methods. So find all will get all the student details from the database, and find by ID will get the student details with a particular student ID. And we have post method which will pass the data, and we have save API to store in database. And put mapping, the difference is mainly post mapping we will insert a new data, we will use put request to update any existing data. So in this video we will see how to write our custom queries with using a JPA. So as you can see, we have these are all basic methods, find by ID, but we don't have find by score. See, as you can see, student has student ID, we have mentioned this as ID, student name and score. Suppose if you want to get the student details by particular score, so for that we don't have a direct method in the JPA. If you can open a JPA repository, we have find all, find by ID, find all by ID. So because we have mentioned student ID as a ID, but we have not filtered the student details by other properties. So how we can do is, so first let's have a API to get the student details by score. So it is similar to this. just copy and paste. Let's change this to score. Get details by score. Let's change this to score, and this also score. So here we have find by ID. We need to have find by score method. So the simple way to define a method find by score is just go to student repository and just define a method what we need. We need a method which will return a list of students with the name find by score, which will take score as a parameter. So that's it. We no need to write any implementation for this. Suppose if you want to find the details, student details with the name, we can write find by student name. We can write, let's have the same method, and find by student name. So it will take a string. So here it should be same as the parameter name. If you see the student, we have S name, S score. So that's why we have defined with the same name, score and a student name, first letter as a capital. So if you define a method like this, we no need to write any query like select star from student where name is this, select star from student where score is this. We don't need to write those queries. So Spring Boot automatically fetches the result and it will return. So let's call the method here, find by score. We have defined. So pass the score, and this will return a list of students. So just change the return type to list of students, and let's access this URL from the Postman and see whether we get the result. So first we need to change the URL because this URL and this URL is same and both are get mapping, so Spring Boot won't run properly. So we need to change the format of the URL. Let's change to score, and now relaunch the app. And now let's go to Postman and try to access this URL with particular score. So students score, and we need to pass a score. If you see the data what we have kept is 3 rows. So let's search the student details with 434. Pass 434 and let's enter. See, we have got the details. Suresh, which is same as this. Suppose if you have more students with the same score, let's have one more row with same score as Rajesh, and let's have one more row with same score, let's say Tom. And now let's relaunch the app, try to access the URL again. So let's access it again. We need to get 3 rows. So as you can see, we got the result. So we have inserted 3 rows with the same score. So we got 3 student details. See, the main advantage here is we just defined a method here. We have not written any implementation. So all basic queries this will provide. So we have also, we want to get a student details whose score is greater than particular score. So for that also we have a method, so which will return list of students. We can define method like this, find by score greater than, and this will take score. So this method will fetch to all students whose score is greater than this. So let's test it. So here, instead of returning the score, we will return all the students, find by score greater than particular score. So relaunch the app. Let's check data. Let's say we will say all the students greater than 300, so we need to get all the 4 rows. Let's go to post name. Let's give 300 here. So as you can see, we have got all the student details whose score is greater than 300. This is 534, 434, 434. So here the beauty is we have not mentioned any query. So these type of methods already provided by the Spring Boot or JPA. So suppose if you want to write our own query, so in real-time projects we won't use these simple queries, we will use a complex queries. So for that also we have a simple way to define. So let's say I want all the students by particular score, and that result should be sorted by the name of the student. So we can define our own method. List of students, just define anything. Find students, find by score order. This method name doesn't matter, but here these 3 method names are matter. If you change anything, like if you change any spelling mistake, it will give an error. So you can try and run this app. Let's remove this, just change the name here, method name. Let's relaunch the app, we will get an error. See, we have got an error, no property with this name. So that's why you should be careful before defining. We have the same name as a parameter. And let's change back. So now we are defining our own method with our own query. So this method name doesn't matter, we will pass score here. And now we will write our own query with using query annotation. And here we will write JPA script, which is similar to SQL. We want all the students from student where SID equal to score equal to question mark order by student name. So this is a sample query. If you want any complex query, we can write like this. And in JPA's query script, we have to mention the number here. This is 1, so that first argument will match this score. So that's it. Let's see whether the result will be ordered or not. And here we will call, instead of getting the details score greater than particular score, we will call the new method find by score with order. Let's pass it. So we need to get the result with the sorted order by name. Let's relaunch the app. Let's go to post name. So here if you can see, the names are not ordered. This is RS, this is again R, this is T. Now it should be ordered. And again we need to pass the same score, which is 434. So here you can see RST, the names are ordered. So this is how we will write our custom queries with using a query annotation. So the main advantage here is we are not connecting to the database our own, and we are not fetching and storing all the details in the list. It automatically connects to the database, executes this query and fetches the result and save in this list. So what we have done here is we just defined our own query. So this is the beauty. So I hope you understood, and these are the methods already provided by default, the basic methods. And if you want any complex queries, we need to write like this. So in future videos we will learn more about REST APIs and how to return an XML and how to accept a JSON, so all those things. I hope you like this video. Please like, share and subscribe my channel. Thank you for watching. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel Skill Set Go. In the last video we have seen different types of API provided by the Java Persistence API repository, and we have seen basic methods and how to write our custom query or any complex query and define a method very easily. So, and when we return an API result, by default the Spring Boot is returning as a JSON. See, here we just mentioned an object student, a list of students and student, and Spring Boot automatically converts into a JSON and we will get a response. So let's first start a project and request for student details. Let's go to Postman. So this is the URL to get all the student details. See here, as you can observe, we have got a JSON response. So in Spring Boot, we have not mentioned anywhere to return a JSON response. We just returned an object, it automatically converts into a JSON. Suppose I want an XML here, I don't want a JSON response. So this also supports by Spring Boot. In headers, we just need to mention we want an XML, not a JSON. So the parameter is accept, and here just mention we need XML. And now let's request the student details. See here, the Spring Boot is not returning any details, but if you mention here a JSON and request now, we will get a JSON response. So we are saying the Spring Boot is so powerful. Why it is not returning an XML response when we request for an XML? Because by default it provides a JSON. So Spring Boot automatically downloads a JSON jars related to the JSON. See, these are the JSON core. So that's why it by default converts to JSON. If you want XML response, we need to have a dependencies related to XML. So what we need to do, we just need to go to Maven repository. So just search JSON XML. So let's go JSON data format XML. So there are so many versions. Let's go and see the JSON core 2.11.3. See here you can see 2.11.3. Let's have the same version 2.11.3. So let's copy this dependency and let's put it in POM XML. Just keep here and let's save it. Here the dependencies will get downloaded from the internet and it will keep in a local. So it is downloading the resources. So it got downloaded, and now let's relaunch the app. We just kept XML dependencies. We have not changed any code. Let's relaunch the app. And go to now Postman and now request for XML. Now we have XML and now send the request. See the magic of Spring Boot. We have got an XML response. If you want a JSON response, just change to JSON. We will get JSON response. So this is the magic of Spring Boot. We just added the XML dependencies. At first, this dependency is not downloaded automatically by the Spring Boot because by default it will have a JSON dependencies. If you have both dependencies, it will be overloaded. That's why it won't provide. Suppose now Spring Boot provides both JSON and XML. Now I want restrict to provide only XML or JSON. I will provide either one. Suppose let's say I want to provide only XML. I won't provide JSON. How to restrict from server side? Here, if I accessed a JSON, it should not work. If I access XML, it should work. So server side we need to restrict. So let's have a parameter here, get mapping and this is the path, and we have one more like produces. What it will produce, I want to provide only XML, so I don't want to provide JSON. If you want to provide XML and JSON, you can have a comma separated and you can have JSON also. So what else you want to provide? Now relaunch the app and let's see it will work or not. Let's go to Postman. Now our server will provide only XML. We are requesting for XML and sending the request. We have got XML. Let's request a JSON. See, this is not acceptable. The acceptable thing is only XML. See, this is the magic of Spring Boot. See, suppose in post method, let's say post, and here if you observe, we are sending a JSON data as a request body. Suppose server now accepts a JSON, but server wants to accept only the XML. How the server can restrict? Here we can have one more parameter, consumes, and let's mention application.xml and relaunch the app. Let's go to the Postman and let's try to send the post request. We are sending the new students details in a JSON format. If you can see the headers, content type we have mentioned as JSON. Just send the request. So here we have got the correct result. What is wrong? Consumes, we have mentioned only the XML. Let's see database whether it got inserted or not. So how to access the H2 database? H2 console. Let's connect it. Select star from student. So the new value got inserted with 104. So but we are accepting only the XML. Okay, what the request we are accepting is the post request, not the get request. We need to mention those limits for this method. Let's copy and paste here. Let's paste it here. So this is the path, and it produces XML and consumes only the XML, not the JSON. Now let's relaunch. Before we have kept restrictions for other method and we are accessing this post request. Let's go to the Postman and now let's try. It should not work. See, unsupported media type. If we pass the data as XML, it will work. Just take any example. Let's go here, let's go to the body and let's pass. Let's change to student. Unsupported. This is the XML. Let's try to post it. Let's change the header's content type as XML. See, the error has gone. Now let's send the request. See, now it worked. Let's change the point 106 Ramesh new and let's post it. Let's see the database now. See, the new data got inserted. So this is how we can restrict all the request format and the response format in the server side with using produces what type of the response is and the consumes what type of body it will consume. If you want to have both XML and JSON, we can remove these restrictions, or we can have one more like this. Like consumes, we can have application /JSON. Now it will accept both XML and JSON. Here in this body we can send both XML and JSON. Basically the content type, either it can be XML or JSON. So this is the beauty of Spring Boot REST APIs. I hope you liked this video and understood how to pass both types of XMLs and JSONs and how to receive both types of XML and JSON responses. If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe my channel. Thank you for watching. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel Skillset.go. In the last video we have seen how to restrict a client to send only the JSON format data or to send only the XML data using produces and consumes parameters. So produces is to restrict the client to accept only the XML or JSON. Consumes is the parameter to restrict to send data by the client only the JSON or XML or different types of formats. So for now, just revert back the changes. So we have added for two methods, and we have used a Java persistent APIs to access the database. Find all, find by ID, save, all those APIs provided by JPA. And for the database, we used a H2 database, which is provided by the Spring Boot internally. And we have a model student. Whenever we execute this application, automatically the student table will be created in the internal database H2, and this data we can access using the H2 console. H2 console, that one is this one, localhost 8080 H2 console. We can see the data. So in this video we will try to connect the external database, not the internal database H2. So first let's see what database we have externally. We have a dbeaver, is generally used for connecting all the database and write the queries. Yeah, here I have a PostgreSQL. Presently there are no tables in this. There are no databases. Edit connection. So here localhost port is 5432. Database we have is Postgres and the user is Postgres and the password. So these are all details we should mention in the application.properties in the Spring Boot project. So we need a URL, username and password. Here you can see there is URL provided JDBC PostgreSQL localhost 5432 Postgres. So let's keep a same URL in our application.properties. Now we no longer use the H2 database, and here we will provide JDBC PostgreSQL. So let's check the URL again, localhost 5432. /, and the database is Postgres. So before, as it is an internal database, we are not providing any username and password. Now as it is an external database, we need a URL and username and password also to connect to our external database. So we have an URL and username password. So for username we will use spring data source dot username, and the username is Postgres for our DB. And for password we will use spring dot data source dot password, and this also Postgres. So for my external database, username or password is this. So whatever your database username and password, you need to enter here, and the URL we need to enter. This one is the database name, this is the port, and this is the host where the database is running. So before, this student table automatically creates an internal database. Now let's execute our application and let's see whether the table will be created inside our database or not. Let's run the application, relaunch the app. So here, as you can see, we got an error. It's saying failed to bind properties under Eclipse data source, driver class name or PostgreSQL driver class name property. So basically we have not downloaded or we have not kept any dependency of PostgreSQL driver. If we observe in POM XML, before we were using H2 database, so we have H2 dependency here. So now we are using a Postgres database, we need to have a Postgres driver dependency. So let's go to the Maven repository and let's download PostgreSQL driver. Let's search PostgreSQL driver. So here we got PostgreSQL JDBC driver. Let's click and let's take any version for testing purpose, and let's copy this and put it in our POM XML. So our dependency for the PostgreSQL driver is getting downloaded, and it got downloaded. Now let's relaunch the app and see whether we'll get the error or not. See, now we are not getting any error because we have a PostgreSQL driver. And let's see our database, whether the table got created or not. Let's refresh it and see, still the table is not created. So if you want to create, we need to add one more property. We need to add Spring JPA Hibernate DDL auto. So here we need to tell update. So if you add this property, all the models classes with entity, those respective tables will be created in the database. So let's relaunch the app and let's see whether the table will get created or not. And now let's go to the dbeaver and now let's refresh. And check. See, we got a table student. It has column name, SID, score and SName as per the model class. SID, SName, SScore. And now let's access the URLs and let's add a new student details and let's get the details of the students. Let's open a Postman. Let's post a new student details. So here we are sending as a XML, so it doesn't matter. As we have added XML dependencies in our Spring Boot project, the XML also will work. So let's keep it the same data. And here's the content type is XML, and this is the post request and localhost 8080 students. That one will hit this post request, this one, and it will save. So let's hit the URL. See, it got success, we got the response, and let's check the database. Let's open an SQL editor and do query, select star from student. See, we got the data we have added newly. And let's add one more data. Let's go to body 102. Let's change to Suresh and let's change the score as 900 and let's hit the URL. and we have got the response. Let's check the database. Let's hit the query again. See, we got the new data. And now let's hit the get request. Let's go to the postman, and this is the get request, which will get all the student details. See, we have 2 rows and we have got 2 responses. We have got XML response. If you want a JSON response, you need to change the parameter just like this, JSON. We have also seen the power of the Spring Boot in previous videos where we are explaining the JSON and XML. So like this, we can connect external database using these properties. So first 3 are the basic and must parameters. So we need to provide an URL, we need to provide username, and we need to provide password. And this one is optional. If you want to add all the tables by default, we can add other properties. I hope you like this video and understood. Please like, share and subscribe my channel for more videos. Thank you for watching.